So the Florida Jacksonville mission goes from Jessup, Georgia to Ocala, Florida, and it is predominantly mostly just southern. And you think of Florida and a lot of people are like, oh, Miami, yeah, that's what most people think of Florida. I lived in Florida myself. I had no idea that there was that much like country in Florida. I like felt like I was in Alabama, to be honest. And not a bad thing, of course. Alabama's a great place. But I think the most unique thing about the mission is just, Southern hospitality. It is real, and it's in Florida, so that's good to know. The mission also has a lot of military bases in the north, where Jacksonville is, in southern Georgia, so you get a lot of military families, which is kind of sad because they commute a lot and they're not there all the time. And also we had not many ethnic diversities, to be perfectly honest. It mostly was just white and black, and there were Hispanics, but I think when I was there, we had like 17 Spanish-speaking missionaries, and they were all elders, so there wasn't many Spanish speakers there. They had certain areas, of course, but there wasn't many. Florida Jacksonville Mission is, I like to think, the buggiest place I've ever been to in my entire life. The bugs there are kind of like Australia, how you have like the big bugs that are like really gross and terrifying. That's what it is there. They have like banana spiders that are literally like this big, and their web goes from like the top of the tree to the bottom of the ground, and just don't get close because apparently they're deadly. I actually saved a venomous snake on my mission without knowing that it was venomous, of course. Some kids were going to hit it with a hammer, and I was like, no, don't do that. So I picked it up and moved it into a lake, and it was Florida cottonmouth is what it was called, or a water moccasin. They're like the same thing, I guess. But they're like, oh my gosh, you're so silly. But the Lord protects his missionaries. That's what you need to know about that, I guess. I was very safe. You'll gain weight because they feed you a lot, but that's not unique to a lot of missions, but it's the best because you'll eat meat a lot of meat, and a lot of like fresh caught shot meat. They all hunt. I don't want to say all, that's generalizing, but it was good. I think the Jacksonville mission is not what you would expect it to be, but it definitely was great culture exposure if you're not used to like the country southern life. So I say y'all now. That's like a new thing that I picked up. My mother like wants to rip that from me because we're from New York, but I love it. So the mission was not what I thought it would be, but it was great, of course. There's a thing written by an apostle, which I feel like I should know more, but it's called The Promise to the South. And it talks about how the church is going to grow in the South like crazy. And that is what is happening in the Florida Jacksonville mission. A lot of people still don't know who Mormons are up there, but the church attendance is growing. There's about, I would say, 100 to 150 every week, in no matter what ward I was in. And they were splitting wards. Actually, we had a Spanish branch, San Jose branch, which is now a ward, so it became a ward on my mission. And I believe there are 2 other Spanish branches in that mission, but now that we have one ward, so there's one less. So it's definitely growing, that mission. Actually, the first missionaries that came to Florida came to the Florida Jacksonville mission. It wasn't the Jacksonville mission at the time, of course, but in the 1800s they came and actually lived in one of my areas that didn't have any apartment complexes because there were none in the country. We lived with an 85-year-old woman who, her family descendants were the first converts to the Mormon church. And it was funny actually because the only one that converted, it was like 11 siblings, and only one female was allowed to convert because she wasn't married, because the husbands thought that the Mormon guys were going to come and like take their wives and bring them back to Utah. So from that one woman, finally they got older, and when the husbands died, they converted, and then that church started, and that was in the Palaca area, which is mid-north Florida. And actually, Elder Anderson, the apostle, his wife, she's from that area too, and her family was one of the original Florida Mormons. So the church started in the Florida Jacksonville mission, and it's still growing to this day. And we have branched out a lot. They say that they're building a temple in the Jacksonville mission in the coming years, but I will not. I'm not the prophet, so I won't say that. But the closest temple is in the Orlando mission, the Florida Orlando temple, and that is, I could say, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours from where the mission is. But I know so many people from my mission, they would spend like, Friday was their day to work at the temple. They went to the temple all the time. They had temple trips all the time, and it was good to see how willing the saints were to travel, because that's like their closest temple, but they'll get one soon, I'm sure. And I was in Jacksonville 2 times for 2 different transfers. One was Jacksonville Beach, which I would recommend to anybody living there. It was beautiful. It was really tough being a missionary there, actually, because you just walk along the beach and you're like, oh, can't do any of this. And that area was really, I think, probably one of the more diverse areas of my mission. And then I served in Jacksonville, North Jacksonville, which was Den Avenue. That's where most of the military people were. That was very, very city, but the sisters weren't really allowed in most of the city parts, but that's kind of typical throughout all missions, you know. And Palatka. Palatka was my heart. That was just country. Nobody really knows what Palatka is until you get there. A couple people know what Palatka is, but yeah, I think I really liked the variety I got, because I got in both country and city and kind of in between. But Jacksonville is known as the biggest, like the most southern city in the South is what they call it. They have like a phrase that's on like their police logos. I forget exactly what it was, but it's like the most southern city in the South. And so it's like a weird mixture where you have people in the city, but they're definitely like, they're a country. So it's a good mixture, I think.